I got a little tripped up with the, that's fucking stupid. Welcome back, Eric Hattie, Everyday Hustle. Hey, so welcome back. God damn it. Just a fucking blooper reel extravaganza. Welcome back, Eric Hattie, Everyday Hustle. Hey, so it's only been 2 weeks since the last episode, and I have a little bit of an excuse because, it's been a holiday week. I'd like to say there was a lot going on, but, really it was just my wife, my daughter, and I hanging out and enjoying a nice, quiet Thanksgiving. Also in full protest of turkey, we made a chicken. But it's not really important, not why you guys came here to listen. So I want to thank everybody that reached out, from the last episode. It's something I've talked with my therapist about at great length. When this podcast originally started, sure, there was some, pure intention of, I wanted to really utilize and put to use my passion for video production and audio editing and just nerd on nerd level, nonsense. And also, spread the gospel of everything that I believed in. But when you peeled that back, there was a huge focus, for likes, for notoriety, for attention. I found myself not wanting to put these episodes out, because I was getting 6 viewers, 12 viewers, 4 podcast downloads. And I was, just religiously checking, my Simplecast and my YouTube analytics and, getting frustrated that, man, nobody's watching, the people that are watching for a very, short period of time. And, either I said fuck too many times or, the message just wasn't resonating and they were out. And, the more I thought about it and the more I talked with my therapist about this, I realized that, that was the complete wrong reason to want to do this podcast. That, whether I get 1 or 100 million, subscribers, that should not have any effect on, whether I want to do this or not, if I enjoy doing this or not. So, it was one of those, I got to start doing things for myself and not worrying about what others think, which, for a person with mild depression and anxiety and ADD is a really tall order, to not care what other people think or other people's opinions about what I do. I really appreciate it. That was a whole lot of words in a very somewhat unnecessary backstory to explain that, I put this episode out, in the year and 2 months since the previous episode before last week's, or, 2 weeks ago. I've gotten off of all social media except for LinkedIn. I found that I was just falling down rabbit holes and it was affecting my mental health and my productivity. And so I got rid of everything except LinkedIn. And I tell you that because, in the past, when I would put out episodes, it would be a Facebook post and a LinkedIn post and an Instagram post, and I'd be talking about it everywhere and get 4 people. And so ironically, I put this episode out, 2 weeks ago. I made a LinkedIn post about it, but that was it. Not a lot of, fanfare and fireworks. And it was substantially higher viewership and duration than any other episode I've ever put out, at least for the first 7 days of analytics. And I know what you're thinking, Eric. You just literally told us that you shouldn't be doing this for likes and notoriety and attention, and you're right. However, anytime you go into YouTube Studio to make any changes, you're immediately bombarded with your analytics. And ironically, I went in to go adjust a setting, and when I logged in, at the homepage, there was confetti. And I was like, the fuck was that for? And then I started looking, and I was like, oh shit, people are watching this. But beyond analytics on a dashboard, I was getting notes from folks that, I haven't talked to in a very long time or have never talked to, thanking me for being very vulnerable and raw and very transparent about my own experience with being laid off and trying to find a job. It meant a lot. I got a lot of, comfort from people reaching out and saying, I'm so glad that I'm not the only one who's feeling like this, or I'm not the only one that had this experience. It's tough when you're looking for a job and you're going through all of the, rat race of, trying to get a phone call, trying to get an interview, getting ghosted after the interview. It's one of those things where you kind of feel like you're on an island and you're not sure if this is everyone's experience or you're just doing something wrong or what. So, if I could bring some peace to other people's minds as they're going through one of the hardest things they'll ever do in their life, that's awesome. I'm glad we could eat shit sandwiches together. I'm going to be honest. I'm not prepared. Anyone who's watched the first 22 episodes knows that is not a surprise. If we're being completely candid, it's my last day of Thanksgiving break. Over the break, I watched a video about how to, really do proper lighting, in your YouTube studio. I finally had a chance after my daughter went to bed tonight to fuck around and try it out. And I don't know, I'm kind of digging it. However, I'm looking at it on a tiny little camera viewfinder. So hopefully when this gets put onto, the computer, it will look just as good, but I'm pretty impressed. You'll also notice that Captain Overkill is wearing a lav mic while talking into his Shure SM7B. And you're going, that seems like a little bit of overkill, don't you think, Eric? And the answer is yes. Yes, it is. Again, welcome to the world of Eric's nerdy brain. I actually have a shotgun mic that off camera. I've got my Shure SM7B and I've got a lav mic. And tonight, along with, trying out my fancy YouTube lighting setup, I also wanted to see which microphone would give me the best sound because, there are some, nice traits to having a Shure SM7B in front of you. One, it really accentuates that you're a talking head. Two, it's, very much the iPhone of microphones. It's a bit of a dick on the table status symbol. But three, it's comfortable. It keeps me, very, I can't move around a whole lot, otherwise this microphone will get pissed, and I'll cut in and out. So, I see some other YouTubers that, they don't have any visible microphone on them. Clearly they're using a shotgun mic of some sort. So I'm, fortunate enough to have a 4-track, podcast board or mixing board. And so I figured we'd run all three and see, who the winner would be. Maybe I don't have to have this, radio host microphone in front of me and I can, be a little more, centered and comfortable and flexible on camera. Who knows? I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling about a lot of nothing. One of the topics, so you can't see it, but I have a list of ideas for a podcast. Because while I'm never prepared, I'm trying to be at least somewhat in the ballpark of what I should talk about when I sit down. But it's kind of like when you're bored and you're hungry and you go to the pantry and, you're just looking and nothing really jumps out because there's too many options. That's what's happened with my podcast list. So that's fun. There was an interesting documentary that came across my recommendations the other day during the Thanksgiving break. It was called Console Wars. And I believe it's on Paramount Plus. I'm pretty sure. If you haven't watched it, well, so let me back up. If you have an affinity for 1990s nostalgia, really 80s and 90s nostalgia, if you love a good documentary about business strategy, success and failure, if you love a good nerdy, consumer electronic, techie type, narrative, any one of those, this documentary is fucking phenomenal. And it really got me thinking, on a couple of levels. One, there was a lot of nostalgia and history there. Basically the documentary is about, how Nintendo, and their 8-bit Nintendo were the Goliath, and they had, something like 80 some odd or 90 some odd % market share. And they were just behemoths. And there was this little company called Sega that wanted to come in and give Nintendo a run for their money. They brought in this guy from Mattel who had been, slinging Barbies, and now he's going to come in and be the king of video games. And it was fascinating. And so there was some historical validation. I was in a Nintendo household. We had the 8-bit Nintendo, never went to the Super Nintendo. My friend Blake Hudson down the street had one. And so we would just go play his, but even to this day, give me, Ninja Turtles or Super Mario Brothers 3 or Bill Elliott's NASCAR racing or Tecmo Bowl. And goddamn, I'm happier than a pig in shit. And so where the validation comes in is, they were talking about how, Nintendo had this hold on, the family friendly video games, and that they were very particular about, no sex, no violence, no gore. Anybody who had Mortal Kombat back in the day will remember that on the Nintendo, Mortal Kombat players didn't bleed, they oozed green. And on the Sega, it was just blood, blood red, as much gore as you could get out of a 16-bit system, 32-bit system. I don't know. Clearly I was not paying close enough attention. But my mom always told me that I couldn't have a Sega Genesis because it was for grownups and teenagers, and it just wasn't appropriate for kids. And I thought that was horse shit because Craig Morcom down the street had, a Sega Genesis, and the games were just cooler and better graphics and more fun to play, and fucking Sonic. And it was, I thought it was a parental cop out back then, but apparently, guess what, Robin? Some validity to what you were saying. And I apologize. You were sort of right. But there was a backstory in this documentary where they were talking about, there was basically two divisions of Sega. There was Sega Japan, or SOJ, and there was Sega of America, SOA. When the head guy at Sega Japan, went and recruited this guy from Mattel to come run Sega of America, he told him, I'm going to give you, full autonomy. You can run this the way it needs to be run in America. And, as the documentary showed, he was a man of his word, and he stuck to it as much as he did not want to allow some of the things that were being done. He stood by his word, and he let, this guy run it the way he thought an American company should be run. You fast forward, Sega has been wildly successful. They got a ton of market share. I mean, Nintendo was always going to be number one, but they ate into a massive chunk of that market share. And what you saw was Sega wanted to keep, advancing, keep innovating, evolving their systems. And there were these little petty things being done from the Japanese side of the business that were shutting it down. There was a chip company that had reached out and said, hey, we have this, bonkers chipset. We think it would be perfect for video games. It's 64-bit. And Sega went out, they met with them. It looked like it was going to be like a huge hit. And then, Sega of Japan basically just made the negotiations fall apart. You fast forward, like a year later, Nintendo announces a partnership with that same chip company for a 64-bit chip that was going to be the N64. There was another one where, the head of Sega of America met with Sony, and Sony wanted to get into the video game platform. They needed somebody to really help them. They had this partnership written up where they were going to share hardware, and Sega Japan shut it down. Fast forward, Sony is now the domination of video game systems. And they did that for two reasons. One, they took what they learned from Sega in the negotiations and, they put it in their arsenal and ran with it. But two, they went and got like the number 2 or number 3 guy at Sega and made him the head of Sony video games. This is the shittiest recap of a documentary ever, mostly to explain why it got me thinking so much. Is why are businesses so quick and so petty to, if somebody else within the same organization is having wild success, why is it the, knee-jerk reaction or instinct to destroy it, to temper it, to shut it down, rather than to celebrate it and help grow it even further beyond what anyone thought success could be? Why is that? I can speak from my own personal experiences, at any number of organizations I was at, that if you had an idea that was in direct conflict with somebody else's project, somebody else's thought process, somebody else's wishes, it would get just railroaded in, political theater within, the organization. And I get that, so many people are all about, hey, this is cutthroat and this is capitalism. And, I would stop and say, hey, look at the fucking jersey you're wearing. You're on the same goddamn team. This would be like if, my beloved Detroit Lions were, one field goal away from, winning the Super Bowl. I mean, we're getting far-fetched here, right? 4th and inches, 1 second. Well, no, they would run it at that point. Let's say, they're on the 21-yard line. It's the 4th quarter. There's 2 seconds on the clock. They are 1 kick away from being, first time Super Bowl champions. Ball snaps and the entire offensive line just turns around and they tackle the kicker. Not somebody on the other team, but your own offensive line comes and just fucking haymakers you, because they wanted to be the stars that won the game, not you fucking kicker. Like, it seems ridiculous and unfeasible beyond the fact that the Lions would ever be in the Super Bowl. I hear you. But in so many, sales organizations, that's exactly what happens. Your division's doing better than somebody else's. That person's new mission, is to take all of their time and energy into carving out your success. Rather than taking that time and energy and improving their own division, evolving to the next generation of plans. They just want to take you out and continue on their path of mediocrity. And it's just, it's silly. It's nonsense. And so I pose you with 2 points. One, why is that done? And 2, why is it acceptable? You look at where this has happened so many times in the history of corporate America. And you always see, that's just what happens. That's just, hey, it's cutthroat, it's dog eat dog. That's what it is. And I don't understand why that's acceptable. Never in my life have I ever gone out of my way to make somebody else less successful in my organization. It just, I cannot fathom. There's been plenty of times where I'm having to give a presentation or a pitch within the organization where I'm pointing out flaws of other divisions and how my grand plan would be different, or I'm reporting on results of the previous quarter for my division and showing that it had outperformed in creation cost or in customer satisfaction or just in total volume. And those, I think there's a very clear difference between, hey, I'm reporting the facts and I'm not saying it to shit on you. I'm just saying it to give, comparison or, understanding, where this falls or why the message is important. What it has never been from me is I'm doing better than Joe. And so I want you to take Joe's budget and give it to me so that I'll, even perform even better. It's silly. It's asinine. You look at every famous story, the Sega documentary is just one of many where, the business was destroyed or it was set back, extreme, amounts because of this infighting. Apple's another great example. If you look at Apple in the 80s, when, they were bringing in, what's his name? The guy he was the CEO of Pepsi and they brought him in to run Apple. I even read, Walter Isaacson's, biography about Steve Jobs, and I can't remember. Anyway, there was infighting and people were trying to thwart what Steve Jobs was doing. Steve Jobs was trying to thwart what the Pepsi guy and his team was doing, and ultimately it led to them ousting Steve Jobs. Apple going to the brink of bankruptcy over the next decade, and ultimately bringing back Steve Jobs, and the rest is history. It's a story as old as time, and I don't understand why we can't watch these stories, learn from these stories, grow from these stories, and not repeat it over and over and over. And I don't know if it's just that, it's very rare that you hear these stories from corporate America and a woman's name is involved. So is it a dick measuring contest? Is it a pissing contest? What is it that makes people want to destroy the good of their own company, out of, self-serving, principle and ego and, whatever. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on, the infighting within an organization and how, good people have taken their own companies out of competition, out of business, because of their own egos and self-serving issues. So, I very well might circle back and do another episode about this in the near future. But, guys, I truly appreciate the viewership. I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate the interaction. So, like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you're listening to this. I truly, truly appreciate it, but it doesn't matter whether you do or not. I'm going to continue to make the content because I'm doing it for me. my therapist will thank me later as I write her a check. Anyway, I'm Eric Caddy. This is Everyday Hustle, and I promise the next one won't suck.